Well, let's bring in our panel to talk about it. J.D. Gordon is a former Defense Department spokesman, and Stephen Bucci is a former military assistant to former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. Gentlemen, we thank you both for your time. Stephen, let's begin with you. Ashton Carter, qualified pick, last man standing, or both?
He's definitely the last man standing. He is qualified. He's been the Deputy Secretary of Defense. He is very much a technocrat. He is not going to be a big policy strategist. But I don't think that's what the president wants. So I think he'll be the guy. He'll get confirmed, and we'll roll on with the same semi-dysfunctional policies we've had for the last couple of years.
J.D. Gordon, in the past, you've given us the 411 on some folks you've encountered at the Pentagon. You offered a cautionary note, for example, on Jay Johnson, who's now over at Homeland Security. What's the dish on Ash Carter from your perspective?
Well, I agree with the things that Steve said. You know, Steve and I worked at the Pentagon as well together. I think that Ash Carter is basically the last guy standing. He's a career academic. He has his undergrad from Yale, his PhD from Oxford. He spent most of his time in academia, but he's had very senior posts in both the Obama administration and the Clinton administration. During the Clinton days, he was the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy. That's one of the top guys there. And then during the Obama administration, when I was there at the Pentagon, he came in for the first 9 months. My last 9 months at the Pentagon, he was the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisitions, Technology, and Logistics, which is also one of the top posts at the Pentagon. And after that, he became the Deputy Secretary of Defense. That's the #2 guy. So he knows the Pentagon inside and out. He's never been in the military. But yet for the Obama administration, this is probably the best guy they're going to be able to get, who's going to be able to be confirmed. He's not really all that controversial. He hasn't said any of the really crazy things that Secretary Hagel said in the past, or some of the irresponsible things that Jay Johnson has done in the past. For instance, that whole Fort Hood workplace violence shooting that Jay Johnson had claimed it to be. Ash Carter doesn't really have anything like that in his resume, if you will.
Well, let me go back to you, Steve. You just heard J.D. said he thinks it's going to be an easy confirmation. What are you hearing about the plans on that? Are they going to try to expedite it, or given this standoff on immigration, will this thing have to wait until the next Congress?
I'd be very surprised if they can get it in place before these guys go home for Christmas. That would be hugely difficult to do. So I think you'll see it after the first of the year sometime. He personally will not have any problem getting confirmed, but I think the Republicans will use the confirmation hearings as a vehicle to really shine a spotlight on some of the difficulties that the administration has had with their overall national security policy.
J.D., mention was made of the fact that Ash Carter is not a veteran, did not serve in the military, but can he be expected to be a, quote, loyal soldier to the administration, or are there some situations where he's disagreed with Mr. Obama and his team in the past?
Well, if he's disagreed with President Obama, I'm not aware of any instances. I think he's just going to do whatever they want him to do. I think he's going to be a loyal soldier. He was in the Clinton administration as well, and Obama administration. This will be his third senior appointment in the Obama administration. Like I said, I think he's just going to do whatever they want him to do. He's not going to challenge him. Even Secretary Hagel came around to the fact where he was challenging President Obama. I don't think you're going to see that kind of resistance from Ash Carter.
Well, let's talk more about that, Steve, and the departure of Chuck Hagel. As that came down, now you gentlemen both worked for Don Rumsfeld, and the morning after the midterm elections, when I finished second, Rumsfeld was sent packing. Was there anything similar in this thing, Steve, to what went on with Rumsfeld?
A little bit. You know, Secretary Rumsfeld went to President Bush after the 2006 elections and said, look, you got to get rid of me, because if I stay here, you're not going to get anything done with this new Congress. In this case, I think Hagel said, look, I'm not doing anything anyway. You're not listening to me. I'm out of here. We've already had that from Gates. We've already had it from Panetta, who both said unambiguously, this is a bad way to run national security policy. Now you have the guy who wasn't even really involved in it finally getting fed up too. So, you know, there's a problem with the process here. It's broken, and I don't think Ash Carter will help fix it, but we could get some work on defense acquisition reform because now you're essentially going to have two deputy secretaries of defense with Bob Work and Ash Carter.
Ah,
in
interesting.
office.
Tag team. All right, Steve, JD, stay right there. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. So, with that development, two guys who stay with us to continue the conversation, J.D. Gordon, former Defense Department spokesman, and Stephen Bucci, director of the Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign and National Security Policy for the Heritage Foundation. Stephen, if they're paying you by the word for the title there, pal, it's pretty good. No, jokes aside, this whole deal with fighting ISIS and the Iranians using the old F-4 jets in Iraqi airspace, what's your read on this?
Well, you know, we personally wish we could keep the Iranians out of this. They're already in it. They've got advisors from their Quds Force commandos with some of the Shia militias in Iraq. Now they've got their planes flying over eastern Iraq to bomb targets. We're kind of stuck with them there, but we need to watch them because they are not matched up interest-wise with us. They're chasing their interests, not ours.
And JD, do those interests intersect in any way, or is this like playing with matches now?
Well, they do intersect, but we've got to remember that Iran was responsible for a lot of our U.S. troop deaths and coalition deaths in Iraq because they were given these very sophisticated IEDs to the Shia militia there. So Iran will try to bleed us in any way we can. So we've just got to be wary of what they're doing. And basically, if they focus on whatever targets they're trying to hit from ISIS, we focus on ours and try not to get in each other's way. That's the best we're going to come out of it, because in any way they can try to kill Americans, they would try to do that too.
Now, Stephen, officials say there is not any coordination between Iran and the U.S. on this, but in a weird way, is this at least some sort of cooperation between the U.S. and Iran, or at least a commonality of interest in this narrow range?
Well, I mean, they have an interest to keep ISIS out. They're Shias, ISIS are Sunnis. They're in a competition with the Saudis and the other Gulf states who, have an interest there. This is a witch's brew of bad news for us. So anybody who's celebrating their cooperation here is sadly mistaken. These guys got their agenda, and it is not the same as ours, even though we both dislike and fear ISIS.
And JD, the Iranian rhetoric has grown more bellicose, not only directed at Israel, but just in terms of a veritable call to arms. Do you expect to see the Iranian armed forces to add more to their ranks? Are we going to see more of a buildup from Iran here over the next year?
Well, that's certainly possible, but this is good news for Iran in some other ways too, because of the nuclear accords. If the heat is on ISIS and everybody's focused on the fight against Islamic State and trying to wipe out these terror groups, they're not going to be paying as much attention to the nuclear program. And in fact, those nuclear accords really aren't worth that much. They're just delaying Iran's acquisition of a nuclear weapon. And there's one primary reason for that. The accord only deals with uranium enrichment. It doesn't deal with nuclear warhead development. It doesn't deal with missile technology. And there's a base southeast of Tehran. It's called Parchin. Parchin is where we believe the Iranians are building a nuclear weapon and testing devices. That is off limits to UN inspectors. How could we have an accord if we can't even get into Parchin to see what they're doing? That's why that nuclear accord only delays nuclear weapons for Iran, doesn't stop it in any way.
Wow, that takes the whole Reagan admonition, trust but verify, to trust and don't bother to check. It's a very dangerous situation. Gentlemen, about a minute 30 remains. I'd like to get your reaction, both of you, on the story we heard yesterday that basically led our program, the talk that the ISIS caliphate, al-Baghdadi, one of his wives and one of their children picked up. Now we're hearing that may not be the case. Your evaluation on that report, Stephen, first to you, and then we'll have JD weigh in on it too.
This is a nothing burger. This, it's not going to affect anything. Even if it is his wife, al-Baghdadi's not going to change what he's doing. He's a complete ideologue. This is a distraction, and it turns out it may not even be his wife. So I wouldn't waste a lot of time on this one.
JD, you share that opinion?
Yeah, I do. And, one of the cultural things over there, too, he's allowed 4 wives anyway. So, who's to say if it's his wife or one of them? And I don't think it's very consequential.
Fair enough. I think about Marx, not Carl, but Groucho. What was the old joke? The penalty for bigamy is 2 wives. Think about it. J.D. Gordon, Stephen Bucci, all kidding aside, we thank you for your insights, both on Ashton Carter and the more serious note, Iran's possible involvement in the fight against ISIS. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Well, you heard what they had to say, and it's not a pretty picture involving ISIS. Your take on that, why don't you tweet me your thoughts at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum, and we'll be right back.